Hello and welcome to this short webinar on conversion rate optimization through web performance. My name is Alex Painter and I work in product marketing at Eggplant. So I'm here to talk about conversion rate optimization and web performance. So web performance meaning speed, a factor that's often overlooked in conversion rate optimization. So here today I'm going to cover how to identify problems, how to identify poor performing pages, the ones that could be causing potential customers to drop out. Then we're going to show you a few ways to fix slow pages and deliver better user experiences that should make campaigns more effective. So just to set the scene, I'm going to outline a couple of recent stats that highlight why we need to care about this in the first place. There's quite a well-known stat from Google's DoubleClick, for example, that more than half of users abandon pages that take longer than 3 seconds to load on mobile. And the second is one of our own customers, Cook, who managed to improve conversion rate by 7% by cutting load times by less than a second. So I've included references for both of these case studies. There are lots more on a site called wpostats.com if that's of interest. Moving on though to checking the health of your conversion funnel. So looking at web pages in a conversion funnel, there are a few things we need to care about. So first and foremost, perhaps obviously, is everything actually working? And we need to keep checking that regularly. Things change, outages happen, so regular frequent checks are essential. Next, we need to know if it's fast enough. Has anything caused a slowdown? For example, is the weight of traffic causing any speed issues? Hopefully, you'd have performance tested your pages well in advance, but there's always a risk. Finally, it's important to know how different groups of users are experiencing your web pages. What works on a high-powered Mac on superfast broadband might be failing entirely on a mobile phone on a slow 3G connection. So taking that first point first then, is everything working? So I'm going to start with synthetic monitoring, and that's just a way of automatically checking every few minutes, running through a journey or a particular page to see if everything is working as it should. And it does this under stable conditions so that you know that if there's a change, it's due to a change in your system, not in the network. This is a screen grab from our own monitoring insight solution, which performs regular checks on pages and journeys through an application, and it alerts you to changes in performance, errors and outages. So here we've got a step view waterfall that makes it easy to see which pages are slow or broken. So for example, here you might look at that first page, a landing page, and think, oh, that looks like it's taking a little longer than the other pages, so there's something wrong there maybe. There's a color coding to indicate if something is broken. So if something is red, you've got a serious problem. If it's black, it's down altogether. Here we've got a couple of warnings. This could mean, for example, that there's a third-party asset that's not loading properly. If you want to look at the same sort of thing over time, you can. So this is one of these pages over the course of a day. And you can see there's a peak towards the left-hand side, which indicates a slowdown. And if you want to investigate that, you can drill down further to look at an object-level view to find out what the cause of the slowdown was. So here, it was a CSS file. This would have meant that someone would have had to wait up to 15 seconds before they could even see the web page. And you can imagine a large number of people would drop out before waiting that long. So this is a really good way to dive into the root causes of issues. However, synthetic monitoring is a great first port of call. So it will instantly tell you if you have a problem at your end. But what it won't do is tell you how real users are experiencing your website. So for this, you need a real user monitoring solution, such as our own real customer insights. So that gives you insight into the experience your site delivers for different groups of users. So that's especially helpful in tracking down issues that will affect some potential customers more than others. Here, for example, we can see that the factor that has the biggest correlation with poor performance is the Android platform. So that's a recurring theme, in fact, especially on JavaScript-heavy pages with lots of custom functionality, and that can do a lot to slow down web pages for mobile users, especially on Android. Something like Real Customer Insights is also a good way to isolate the poorest performing pages, the potential blockages in the conversion funnel that could be causing prospects to drop out, as well as homing in on the groups of users who are seeing slower load times and poorer conversion rates. So here I've highlighted a couple of groups of pages, or one standout page, and another cluster of pages there on the bottom right. I should explain that this scatter plot shows traffic on the y-axis and load time on the x-axis. So you're really interested in pages towards the right-hand side of the graph, particularly pages towards the top right, because these are the slowest, highest traffic. These are the ones you really want to be interested in. Improvement. In Real Customer Insights, this all happens behind the scenes, and you just need to enter a new, faster load time to get an understanding of what that would mean for conversions and revenue. Now I'm going to move on to what you can actually do to improve landing pages and other pages in the conversion funnel. But I'm starting with landing pages because in many ways they represent the biggest risk. It's a cliche, but it's still true to say that you only get one chance to make a first impression. Landing pages are also at a disadvantage right from the start because they're the entry point for the website. This means visitors won't have any assets for your website, such as images, scripts, and style sheets in their browser cache. Because they have to load all these things from scratch, it's going to slow down the loading and displaying of that page. Fortunately, there are a couple of ways to get around this. So one of them is to use a different template, so not the one that applies to the whole site. This allows you to load only, say, the scripts and the styles you need for that page, rather than the bundles you need for the entire site. So, for example, the site-wide styles for a website could easily be 260 KB, and you should be able to shrink that down hugely, maybe to something like 28 KB, which is going to make your landing page display that much faster. You also want to look at things like the hero image, for example. This is kind of an obvious thing, but how big is it? Importantly also, how big is it on mobile? Is it scaled down, for example, or are you delivering a separate, smaller image to visitors on mobile? If the image is just being scaled down, if it's the same file, that means you're delivering a much larger file than is necessary to visitors on mobile, which is going to make your page particularly slow on mobile. So getting images wrong can also have some unforeseen consequences. For example, if you're relying on the page to provide contrast for white text on a dark background, and you've forgotten to set a dark background color as a fallback, then a slow loading image could mean people miss your offer entirely. To diagnose this sort of thing, you can use things like film strips and heat maps in tools such as Performance Analyzer. These things will tell you how long it takes different areas of a screen to display. So how fast does your key offer appear, for example? Does the logo take a long time to appear? Another useful technique is inlining CSS. So loading your styles inside the HTML rather than requesting a separate file. This is really useful because in the normal course of events, your browser loads the HTML for the page, then requests the CSS file, waits for a response, and only then can it display the page. However, if you embed your styles directly into the HTML, your landing page can start displaying immediately. So you cut out that bit on the right-hand side altogether, and you just start displaying the page. So the disadvantage of doing this normally is that the CSS isn't separately cacheable for future visits. People can't store that CSS file in their browser cache because you're loading it with the HTML. That doesn't really matter here. This is a campaign landing page. So in this case, you're really only interested in that first visit. You're not so interested in getting that CSS into the browser cache for subsequent visits. One other thing you might consider is using some of the images for in your emails and ads, or using some of the same images in your emails and ads as you do in your landing page. For example, you probably include your company logo in both your email and on your landing page. If you're sourcing both of them from the same place, then people using browser-based email should have that image cached when they click through to your landing page. So the result would be that your landing page just loads just that bit faster, and the logo should display pretty much instantly, because the end user doesn't have to wait for it to load again. You could even try doing the same thing with custom fonts, just to help ensure that the text on your landing page displays that much faster. And slow loading text because of custom fonts can be a real problem. Now, further down the funnel, I'm today just going to talk about one rarely used but very simple and really useful technique, and that's prefetching. So every page in your conversion funnel will have different assets. So they may be scripts, they may be style sheets, they may be images. And every time someone navigates to one of these pages, they have to wait for those assets to load. So but what if you could make sure that they had already loaded by the time they reached that page? That way, that subsequent page could display almost instantaneously. That's what prefetching enables you to do. So prefetching is a way to load assets that you think visitors will need in advance. Because you don't instantly click through to page 2 when you're on page 1, there's always some downtime, some idle time. And it's during that idle time that while someone's reading through the page, your browser in the background can be busy loading what it needs for the next page. So normally, this is something that you should probably use sparingly on a normal website, because once someone's landed on your website, you don't really know where they're going to go next, and you don't want to waste bandwidth on redundant assets. But when you have 2 or 3 pages in a funnel, you know exactly where you expect visitors to go next. So you can confidently prefetch what you need for the next step. So on step 1, you start loading assets you need for step 2. That makes step 2 load that much faster. And on step 2, you can start loading assets for step 3, and so on and so forth. Almost the best thing about it is that it's really easy to do. It's normally just a line or 2 of code. And you can do it either in the HTML or in the header. So I said this was going to be a very short webinar, and we're going to draw it to a close there. Thank you very much indeed for listening. If you'd like to know anything more about any of the things we discuss here, I'd be more than happy to speak to anyone directly. But for now, I'm just going to say thank you for listening, and goodbye.